Hey everyone, this is the first ever Haven and HealFlip.
Yeah.
We've come together, our minds and our nervous systems, to share more about this concept of acceptance.
hmm
And Joe's going to talk more about ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm going to
Yeah.
talk about grieving and acceptance. And we're also going to talk about the concept of living as we're healing. And I know that
hmm
that one's really hard for many people to kind of, conceptualize. So I think it'd be a good place for us to first of all just pause literally here in this moment and reflect on where we're at from a maybe nervous system perspective. And maybe we're going to do that by just leaning back in our chairs, wherever we are, in our beds, wherever we are, and just kind of noticing with awareness without trying to fix anything, without judging. We're going to notice our thoughts. We don't have to change them or fix them. We're going to notice the sensations in our body. This is not labeling symptoms. This is not about trying to figure anything out or about a story. This is about sensation. Just noticing if there's a tightness or a tension or a heaviness or a lightness or a tickle or a trickle, whatever's around, just notice and maybe place your hand on whatever area feels like it's speaking. Maybe take a deep breath and also notice what emotion is there. Maybe there's fear. Maybe there's overwhelm. Maybe there's gratitude. Maybe there's joy. Maybe there's grief. Knowing that all of these can be here together. And lastly, just noticing how you're supported by the chair or the bed or the ground beneath you. That sense of stability and support. You are held here now in this moment. And you're held here in this space by Joe and I and by this community. Just take a deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And we've just made space for this conversation.
Right. We practice acceptance. That's part
Yeah,
of it right there.
exactly, right? Now that's a
Yeah.
perfect segue.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, we've had a lot of questions come in about acceptance,
Yeah.
what that looks like when you're in a bed and you're struggling, when you
Mm.
have limited capacity. So tell us a little bit about how you see acceptance, what that means to you, how you walk your members through that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great topic. I honestly think this is the foundation of really healing. First thing I want to say is I'm not a therapist. I would love to be one day, but maybe, but don't have the schooling behind that. But a lot of like what I learned to heal myself and what I still use to this day is a lot of things that I learned from psychology textbooks, from a psychology lens. And this was many, many years ago, prior to a lot of what is out there now with like nervous system healing and neuroplasticity. And that is really what led me to kind of heal myself. And, you briefly mentioned it through the lens of acceptance and commitment therapy. That is ultimately what I believe is really, I mean, it's all nervous system, it's all neuroplasticity, but it was like prior to that. And I really believe that's the foundation of healing. But
Mm.
most importantly, getting to that place of acceptance, surrender, kind of like what we just did right there is a great starting point for it. For me, it's learning to handle your symptoms better, learning to be with symptoms and not let them control your life from the mental perspective, but also the action perspective. And to me, that's really acceptance. It doesn't mean um, I accept that I'm going to be sick. I accept that I have to like feel like crap for the rest of my life, or even, that I have to like how I feel currently. That's not acceptance, but it's I am okay right now. This can exist right now, and it can also shift. It can change. It can move around. And that's all part of acceptance. It's not being locked into this rigid mindset of like how we feel right now is forever, even if we feel good sometimes. That's something I even like get caught up in. There are times when I've felt amazing when I'm just like living life, skateboarding, doing all these things. And we even get caught up in that, like, oh, this is how I'm gonna feel, from here on out. And as you know, it's just recognizing that things are constantly changing. There's
Mm.
always healing through it if we're handling things the right way, if we're doing the right things. But even the good times are shifting, and it's just allowing and accepting the full human experience. Like the good, the bad, the ugly, the parts and the times where we want to run away, where we don't want to honor what we're feeling, and like, and even embracing the good stuff that we, sometimes maybe have neglected ourselves to be okay feeling bored and feeling safe in our body. That's like even that's part of it too. I think when people live in that fight or flight state or that shutdown state, even safety can feel foreign and uncomfortable. And like
Yeah.
learning all of it is okay. And so yeah, I don't want to go too much further in that, but I think that that's a good like starting point of explaining it. Obviously, there's so many layers to this, and we'll go into this,
Yeah, I
as
love that
as
you
we
said that too. Is just like the acceptance, and you don't have to like it, you don't have to love it.
yeah.
And that's something that I teach as well, is because for me, again, you talked a little bit about this, basically what healing is, right? For me, people ask me, like, what is your definition of healing? And it's when, just like you said, similarly, when the symptom, the emotion, the belief, the story, the sensation no longer is your life, when it no longer
Hmm.
controls you, when it no longer makes every decision for you. Like that to
Yeah.
me is healing, because a lot of
Yeah.
people will say like I need to be healed and everything needs to be perfect, and
Mm.
we know that life will always life, and also that your body will always talk to some extent. Doesn't mean it needs to be chronic debilitating, but the body speaks. And I think
Hmm.
the difference is, as you do this work, is that now you understand the language, right? You
Hmm.
can listen to the body, you can pause and understand. And with acceptance, for me, in what I teach, my members, is acceptance, like you said, is not about accepting this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Acceptance is the acceptance of this moment.
Hmm.
And we all start, healing starts, right? Like moment by moment. It's about micro moments. And that's really kind of what we want to share about today, right? Is acceptance feels so big, right, Joe? Like
Yeah.
you say it and you're talking in your Instagram reels and your, TikTok, and like we're all saying like accept, allow, and
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh my God, this feels so big. I can't accept that I'm this sick. I can't accept that I'm stuck in my bed. I can't be here." So there's this like conflict, there's this
Hmm.
friction, there's this fighting, and it like reinforces the survival energy. And then we're stuck in more of this, resistance, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, talk a little bit about like how this
Yeah.
progressed for you. So you start studying, like the acceptance, your
Yeah.
understanding stuff, and like, yeah, how does this evolve for you, and how does this support your clients?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I wanted to say too is that like I understand that too. Like I struggle. The reason why I like teach acceptance is because I struggled immensely with it for years. And I was trying to fix in different ways, taking pills, supplements, treatments. And I'm not saying don't do any of that. Listen to your doctors if they're doing that. But I was coming at it from almost an obsessive place, and I was so hyper fixated and focused on that and focused on all my symptoms and trying to micromanage everything. And the one thing that I do want to say though is, to get to that state of acceptance, we also kind of need to learn how to practice presence. Because this is where when acceptance feels so big, it's because we're almost like projecting our symptoms into the future and thinking we have to accept them for this for I don't know, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and almost like think worst case scenario, if I am stuck like this the rest of my life, can I accept this? And that's not really acceptance. That's honestly like in some ways catastrophizing and visualizing in the wrong
Okay.
way if we want to talk about it. It's a clever little thing that our minds do and try to trick us into thinking this is the way to accept. I've just got to plan for the worst and be okay
Yes.
with the worst.
Yes. And
I try to do that too.
yeah, I did that too, the catastrophizing, but also
Yeah.
like the power, like you said, of envisioning and seeing your future. And this is a perfect example of acceptance and then this story. So like
Hmm.
you're creating a story around it
Yeah.
versus accepting without attaching a story or making meaning, right? So
Hmm.
again, like it's like you're out of the present immediately, right? Because a story brings you elsewhere. And
Yeah.
then you find yourself projecting into the future. So we're talking about, can we uncouple the story from the experience and just be here in this moment, like
Hmm.
one moment at a time?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is where it's practice. It's continual practice, and it's not even acceptance is not a really good word because it's accepting over and over again. It's like allowing over and over again, and we get lost, and sometimes we go back into resistance. That's part of it. It's not like a thing that like a light bulb that flickers on and we're in acceptance and this is good from here on out. It's a continual practice that gets easier
Yep.
with practice, with time, and we recognize, oh, I'm like way in my head in this story in the past, in the future, and then you recognize and you're like, you know what, that's not helpful. Let me come back to the present moment. And this is where, again, I love me and Vanessa have such like aligned views on like methods and tools. Like this is where I love these type of things. I don't even look at them as tools. I look at them as practice, things that are, beneficial. And this is where some of the practices I think are really needed. Like it's hard to come I think it's personally, I don't know if I could do it. Come to a state of acceptance allowing without also doing practices that help me do that. Like my brain will spiral into OCD and, thinking in the past and the future, if I don't have things that ground me in the present that I can come back to.
Yeah, and that's talking about like the supports, like I call them supports, right? Like
Yeah.
how can you support this cultivation of safety in this
Yeah.
moment? I think, we're not acceptance isn't something that just the light switch clicks on and you just have it. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are waiting for that to happen where it's like, well, I haven't accepted yet. Well, acceptance is a continuum. Like it's a
Yeah.
spectrum. It's some days you'll
Mm.
feel more of it, other days you won't. And then as
Yeah.
we bring in supports like, whatever tools, your somatic tools, maybe
Hmm.
tapping, maybe just getting outside and grounding in nature.
Hmm.
I always see you like literally you're always on the grass
I
and
love nature. I'm always
right?
outside,
Yeah,
guys.
always outside. And that is a support. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there's the tools, but there's also, these supports. There are many pathways to safety is the point that I'm
Hmm.
getting at. And like you, I don't think I would have been here had I just like stayed in the suffering 24/7
Yeah.
and just allowed the extreme chaos of whatever it was. It had to start off with like, how can I bring safety here too? I'm not trying to
Yeah.
stop everything, although
Yeah.
I want it to stop. Like, let's be
Yeah.
honest, right? I don't think if you hear someone saying like, no, I don't want it to stop. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's probably some exaggeration there, but we're saying
Yeah.
like it's human to want to feel better. Don't
Yeah.
judge the fact that you want to feel better, and don't
Yeah.
judge the fact that you're not in full acceptance yet.
Hmm.
You're learning slowly to be in one moment at a time, and all those micro moments, they add up.
Yeah. I look at it as like, can you handle the situation just better than you did before? And sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll fall back in a lot of resistance, but it's okay, are you handling symptoms, sensations, what you're dealing with just a bit better than you
Yeah.
did maybe the day before, the week before? Or, even zoom out in totality, like, you know what, this month or whatever, I have handled my symptoms overall better than I did the previous years or whatever when I was constantly, just Googling symptoms, things like that. And that's also part of acceptance is I honestly think the things that we don't do, that contribute to the resistance. So, like, a lot of people think it's really hard to accept because um, you want to still do some of the behaviors that keep you in that resistant, that fight or flight state, that hypervigilant state focused on the symptoms and sensations. And yeah, it's impossible to accept when that is also going on too. That was like the thing that I had to do that unlocked everything, and learning to practice acceptance was beginning to stop the behaviors that led to focus on symptoms, on how bad I felt every day, on trying to fix my symptoms, on trying to have certainty around them, and trying to figure it all out. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Like, it was really hard for me, but there was a shift where I was like, man, I've been trying to do this for years and it's made me just as sick, if not sicker. And so let me start doing the opposite. Like, let me start like not engaging in that because it's making me awful and I could feel it, in the moment. Like, sometimes you might get like little micro moments of peace and certainty. Oh, okay. I Googled this and it told me actually I'm not dying, or ChatGPT is a big thing now,
Yeah.
you know, but it will still keep that hyper obsessive focus on symptoms and sensations, which ultimately, leads to that
Yeah.
trying to get rid of, fix all of that.
Yeah. And I think that's because we place such a, so much focus on symptoms being the measure of healing, right? And
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that that is a big reason why we get so hyper focused on them, because if they're still
hmm
here, your brain's saying, but they're still here. But that means I'm not healing. Again,
hmm
another story. So, one thing that, I try and tell my members, and I've had to tell myself, is like, well, what else is there? Like,
yeah,
what else is there? And we start to look for signs of healing that have nothing to do with symptoms. And
yeah,
again, there's tons of them. Like, there's enough that I made like an entire, video of them recently because there were that many. And
yeah,
there's really simple things that, unless we intentionally look for them, we're going to miss them. Right.
mm,
And I mean, like, really, really simple ones. Being able to, like you said, respond differently to something,
yeah,
like smiling in the mirror and like, meaning it. You
mhm,
know, listening to the thoughts and not judging them. Just,
mhm,
just even like the simplest of things. I remember for myself is just having like new dreams, different dreams come up, or desires for something
yeah,
new, right? Like, I'm like, I actually want to go to a concert. I want to visualize, like, I want to do, there's
yeah,
signs of things growing. Symptoms were still there, still blaring, still getting my attention. And I think that really is intentional. You talk about breaking patterns. What we're doing is we're recognizing that a lot of the patterns that got us here are protective patterns. There's a
mhm,
ton of stories.
yep,
And for many of us, when we're, maybe doing some of the brain retraining and that sort of stuff, maybe we're not going to the patterns, right? Maybe there's a few questions that came in of people saying
yeah,
like, hey, I did the work the first time and like symptoms disappeared. And
yeah,
then I had a second storm, and like now things are louder and it's taking longer. What I typically see is in scenarios like this, and again, speaking from experience, guys, is that that initial approach was kind of surface level healing in a sense.
Yeah.
Because yes, you were, brought in these resources, you rewired, you brought in maybe some safety, but never fully cultivated it within you. But then you return to all the patterns,
Mm-hmm.
all the same
It's
patterns, just a different
yeah.
flavor, all the same survival mechanisms that got you here in the first place. And so then I see this transfer into healing. People enter in, white knuckling it, survival
Yep.
energy, right? Pressure, intensity, forcing, fixing, figuring it out. It's that same survival energy you had in your life that got you sick, and you're using that same approach for healing.
Yep.
And that is something that we need to be aware of as well, right? Like changing
Yeah.
these patterns. So when I tell people you have to slow down, like stop, you don't have to fix anymore. Can you
Yeah.
just let this be? Can you give permission for this to be here? It feels like you're fighting gravity because
Yeah.
it's going against the patterns that kept you safe all your life.
So true. And what you said there too is that like, I've seen this a lot and I've seen it with myself is we start to get better. We start to like make this like almost like sometimes miraculous like step forward in recovery. And we can dive back into unhealthy patterns, behaviors, things like that. Like I'm the poster child of what not to do as much as I am like teaching people because I've done all the wrong things. Not only did I like heal, I don't even like the term like healed or whatever because I always think like, but I recovered and was living a normal, full, life for over a decade. And then when COVID came around, COVID was the final thing. I don't even think like long COVID is just it's a combination of multiple things, stressors, lifestyle choices, behaviors, like all of these things that were combined. And then COVID like led me to a full sort of relapse. And I've seen it even with people in my group. Like I know some of you guys are on here and you get frustrated, like you make this all of this progress. You're like, boom, you're moving forward in life, you're getting better, symptoms are falling away, it feels great, it feels awesome, and then life happens sometimes. And you can kind of go back into that stress loop, which can bring out symptoms, and you can kind of go back into that fear symptom loop and oh no, what did I do wrong? And then shame comes, guilt comes, and now it's like, oh my God, and now you're even fighting even harder trying to get rid of it. Trust me, I've been there. But this is part of the journey, unfortunately, because like you said, Vanessa, there's layers to it. You'll do some of the right things and break unhealthy patterns and practice that acceptance and get back into life and living and handling your symptoms better. But then it's a I feel like it's a lifelong practice of this type of stuff because those old patterns can still be there, especially, if it's just been a lifelong thing of that negativity bias of constantly thinking worst case scenario, of constant people pleasing, not setting boundaries, stressing ourselves out, overworking, all of that stuff can come rushing back in when we feel better
Hmm.
because it's a comfort zone, you know? And I've had that happen multiple times only to recognize, wow,
Yeah.
this was unhelpful. Like now I've got to go. I know what to do. I know what to, you like the people that are on here that have had that recovery, you know what to do. You've seen it. It's just now, okay, relearning. Fell back into some unhealthy things and there's another layer here and
Yeah.
takes time, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, but that's just the journey.
Yeah.
It's just a journey.
And even just that subtle reminder of like whatever's surfacing, it's surfacing to heal us, not hurt
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the times we think it's a failure and we start judging
Hmm.
that, oh no, I've had a second storm or
Yeah.
I'm in a dip or I'm in a crash.
Hmm.
But there is so much opportunity during that contraction. And
Hmm.
I have seen time and time again how the contractions themselves are the biggest catalysts for healing. Like
Yeah.
I see, you know, people be propelled in new ways because of this contraction. And not because it's like the symptoms are popping and things or whatever, but because you have the opportunity to respond differently to it, because you have
Yep.
the response, you know, the opportunity to bring in support and cultivate safety within that experience. So it is about, you know, the presence, the allowing, the acceptance of right now. Like, hey, I have a dip right now. Like
Yeah.
buddy, you know, like say I'm whatever, doing so well and I'm expanding and life is good and I kind of get sideswiped again and here I am. And
Yeah.
that old neurology is going to come up.
Hmm.
And you're going to beat yourself up because we know we're our own worst enemies. Like we
Yeah.
could give the best advice to everyone else, but more often than not to ourselves, we're going to beat ourselves down. And so this is where the acceptance piece comes is when life happens, because it will, instead of fighting your reality, you have to choose to be here.
Hmm.
You have to intentionally practice capacity to be with what is. And it might
Yeah.
be 1 minute at a time, 2 minutes at a time, you know, 5 minutes here, slowly expanding that. But so much of our suffering comes from fighting our reality,
Yeah.
from right, from saying to our brains, like, I can't be here. I can't be with this. I can't be in bed. I can't be stuck. I can't have symptoms. And yet all of that is happening. So
Yeah.
the sooner we can start to dance with acceptance, bringing it in, build the capacity to allow, I think the sooner the pressure can come fall off,
Hmm.
the less you're going to feel like a failure, the more you'll be able to stay here in this reality, and the more you'll be able to grow within that.
I agree. Yeah, sometimes the best thing, like especially when it's that storm is going on and you're just symptoms are loud, sensations are loud. It's like sometimes the best thing to do is just can I just allow myself to feel like crap? Like it's okay that I feel this way. It's not forever. It's temporary. I know we can always get caught up in what is currently. We always our brains have this power to think what we're in is the going to prolong for hours, days, months, years. It's like that's what happens. It's the same thing that happens when you also get well, and you have these days where you're like, oh, I don't even have symptoms. You forget that symptoms are there, like that you had them. Like your brain just is this has this power to just think that whatever you're in is just going to last. And this goes into, that piece of acceptance is can you just handle the symptoms better? And again, it's not just like one or two things. It's can you also tell yourself a little bit better of a story about it? This my favorite thing that helped saying that mantra that helped me when I was in the worst situations, and I still use it to this day when I go into dips here and there. This too shall pass. This is
Mm,
not forever. It's temporary.
this is
And
temporary,
just,
yes.
yeah, what can I do today that's just gonna help me be okay with this, bring a little bit of joy in, and not let it kind of pull me into this story around everything and pull me out of this you know this whatever I've been doing to let it pull me all the way back down, and sometimes it's simple stuff, like whatever, talk to a friend, pet a
Yeah.
dog, play with a baby, like go for a
Yeah,
little
play with the
walk.
baby.
Yeah, yeah, like if anything you can. And like um and acceptance, I really believe, is like an energy. It really is. It's, like I think you've mentioned this too before, Vanessa. It's either like you're either in an acceptance or resistance. There's kind
Mm,
of really, not really much of a gray area. And it just means it's an energy. Are you are you in that more surrendered state, or are you in that more like white knuckling
contracted,
state,
yes.
like tighten up, like trying to force your way through? You can tell, you can know acceptance. You can tell yourself, I accept. You can even do some of the practices like we talked about for
Yep,
acceptance, all from that non-acceptance state, the
yep,
resistance state. It really is kind of like an energy that you'll know when you're there, and this is where it takes practice and
Yeah.
continual practice. Um,
I agree for sure. And even just like for me, grieving was a
yeah.
gateway to acceptance. And I
Hmm.
talk about that a lot. And I mean, for maybe for your members who don't really know much about that,
Yeah.
grief, I mean, grief isn't just the loss of someone, right? Because grief is, I mean, there's so many flavors, there's so many losses of all kinds. But I love this definition that David Kester uses, where he talks all about, obviously, he's a grief expert, but grief is the change you didn't want,
Mm,
didn't
yeah.
expect, didn't deserve, that happened anyway. And so when we think of like chronic illness, this community, how many
Hmm.
changes in our lives have we had that we didn't expect or deserve? And so grieving itself, let's talk about that because when we
Mm.
can't accept, we really can't grieve. And
Yeah.
we know that many of us are, and vice versa, many of us are feeling emotions bubbling up, but we shut them down because it feels
Hmm. I
really
did that for
scary.
years.
Right? So
I
did
did
I.
that for
So
like
did
most of
I.
my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally for how many, close to 35, 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here as well, is because when you're stuck in a bed, you're really struggling. Like the grief is real. And oftentimes we go into a survival response where we're just trying to fix, we're trying to fight, we're trying to
Mm,
resist, we're trying to protect, all of these things, which are survival. And the grief is still there, and yet it's
mhm.
unacknowledged. Well, what happens when we give ourselves permission to grieve? Not from a place of victim mentality where all day
Yeah.
long we're in a story. That's not
Yeah.
grieving.
No.
That's being in a loop. That's
Yeah.
being stuck in a story. That's saying my sickness is my identity and I'm going to be here forever. This is who I am. This is what's going to happen. Grieving is different.
Yeah.
Grieving is where we meet the emotion in the body. Maybe it
Hmm.
starts percolating like a story of what I have lost, but then we go into the body. And what's beautiful about grieving is that when we grieve what was, we can accept what is and make
Hmm.
room for what can be. So there is this beautiful flow in it. And the grieving itself is healing. And yet, like most of us are completely bypassing that part because
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable. And so the acceptance of, I've just lost this many years of my life. Like, let's be
Hmm.
honest, I've lost these hopes, these dreams, these
Mm,
opportunities, these potentials, what could have been. All of that is so real.
yeah.
How are we supposed to accept where we're at if we're not grieving?
Yeah.
If we don't allow ourselves to feel this? And I'm not saying be in grief 24/7 at all. Like, I'm not saying pour yourself into into the sorrow all day.
Yeah.
I'm saying, can you make dedicated time and
Yep.
space, just like you would meet with a therapist and say, I'm gonna let myself grieve. And for
Hmm.
those who are like stuck, they're like, maybe they need to spark it, right? Those who it's so buried deep inside, maybe it's going to start with just putting on some soft music and letting that be enough and moving just gently. Maybe it's going to
Yeah.
start with writing a letter to your past self or your future self. There are ways
Yeah.
to connect to that grief. And or maybe you have practices. I know yeah, that you go to, or movies that you watch. I remember I would
Yeah.
put on
Yeah.
like the saddest movie and just watch that and
Yeah.
allow the grief to be triggered in that sense. And what happens after we grieve and we emote? There's a
Mm,
softening. There's
there
this
is.
parasympathetic activation.
Hmm.
There's a story that changes and it says, oh, like, what else is there? Maybe there is
Yeah.
hope here. So that's
Yep.
why I'm such a proponent of the grief portion in regards to acceptance, because I see them as part of the same.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, feeling emotions and acceptance, go hand in hand. And I love how you talk about that too from I always look at it, I always thought emotions needed to be like thought through all the time. It's just in the body and expression in various ways. Again, like crying is healing, grieving is
Yeah.
healing. There's also, this is what I learned too. there's also other ways, to release healthy
Yep,
emotions, movement practices. Just going into the body through like a somatic lens and feeling what is there. I struggled for years, specifically with fear. I wanted to run away from it. And a lot of people, I think, that's a big common thing with people with chronic illnesses, anxiety, fear. It just lives in the body along with grief. I mean, I think it's all kind of goes hand in hand. And we want to focus on it, try to get rid of, distract, whatever. And it's like I had to learn too, coming in, like getting out of my head into the body and feeling where those sensations were that I wanted to run away from, and the grief, that I wanted to run away from, that I just wanted to distract and pretend like everything was okay, and just being with it from that lens
exactly.
and allow it to move naturally. And some people, were in here. I think, it's a good, there's some questions on this
Yes,
too that we had that maybe we can start even answering this,
for
but
sure.
I know Aviva mentioned said something here too, and I just want to say this. It is like it does feel like a storm that is never ending. Sometimes it can last, some time. That's part of the nervous system response as well. I don't know, how you feel about this, Vanessa, but like sometimes our nervous system will get activated, and this goes where acceptance goes hand in hand, and grief will be feel like it's just there, it's hovering over us, or sadness or waves or whatever, we're in that wave, and we want to just look, let me just grieve and get through this. This is also where you accept it takes some time. So
Yes.
sometimes that storm is like a thick cloud over the sky that needs to is moving really slow. We've all seen that, when a storm comes in, sometimes it can last days,
Yep.
and that's also how acceptance works. Sometimes that being okay that that's there, and not piling on, like it needs to get, you got to get rid of it.
Yes, yes, that's a big one is I have to get over this. I have to, move through this. And I know that someone had asked about like I think it was the same person, Aviva, about
Yeah,
it feels like, yeah, eventually or no, sorry, I want to grieve. Yeah, so there's the two people saying that the
yeah.
grief is always there. And what do you do when it feels the grief itself feels never ending? Should I redirect? And this is where I always kind of go back to grief doesn't need all of your time and attention.
Yeah,
It needs
yeah.
dedicated time and attention. So chances are, if you're grieving all day long, then maybe you're not really allowing or letting the emotion move through the body, like Joe
Hmm.
said. Another element is being witnessed in grief is incredibly healing.
Hmm.
Meaning, if maybe you feel like the only place that you can grieve is like by yourself and no one can see you and it needs to be hidden, and then you're stuck in it all day because it can't complete because you don't feel like you have the resources or safety within you to complete. This is where the act of being witnessed in your grief can be enough to kind of end like that little cycle of it and knowing that it can rise up again. But if you haven't already, I have on my YouTube channel, I did a 90-minute workshop. It's a grief somatic class called
Mm.
Grieving Chronic Illness. That would be a really, like, going to direct you to that because that is, again, grieving together with other human beings and an opportunity for you to understand how grief is met in the body. So just like Joe said, he's like, I had to meet it in the body, and most people don't know how to do that, right? So if you can, like, maybe I'll post it, or you can check out
Yeah.
the YouTube channel, Grieving Chronic Illness. That would be a like really good place to start because that would give you like all of this foundation.
I'll post it in my community chat as
Yeah,
well too. I would love to take a look at that.
perfect.
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, like this is, I think this is sometimes where the story, like you've talked about like your state can drive your story.
Yep.
I've talked about this many times in my community and calls like that. And it's not about like fighting against that, but recognizing that your state is driving a story.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's like, okay, I see you, I hear you, but I'm not attaching to you because that's where sometimes I think that never-ending grief can happen, or that never-ending feeling like anxiety or whatever sensation is because, sometimes you're in that more shut down, more
Yeah.
dominant state, you might have more grief, or maybe not. Um, that will come up, and you know, then you can kind of play the story in your head of everything that happened over and over again, or fearful, things happening in the future, and playing this story. And like Vanessa said, it's like sometimes now it's just okay, coming back to the body and then moving through it, and then also gently redirecting. Like, hey,
Mm,
okay,
yes.
I see
Yes.
you. Well, I'm making some time for you. But, also there are some good things in life, that are even happening right now, even while
Yes.
you're dealing with these sensations, and making some time for those as well
And
is
that's a
key.
perfect segue into this idea of, like you said, taking things with you,
Yeah.
living as you heal and healing as you live. There's so
Yeah.
many in this community pausing their lives, putting everything on hold. And I get it, like, you may be stuck in a bed, you have zero capacity, but a lot of us actually do have more capacity. And we can get out of the house. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we prioritize the practices and the healing work, and we forget about the living, and how the living life is medicine, how life is part of the healing.
Mhm.
And also I shared this recently too, that at my worst, when I was stuck in a bed, when I
Yeah.
was 10 out of 10 symptoms, I had to find a way to incorporate something other than healing,
Yeah.
something that was aligned with my values, my beliefs, my life, who I wanted to be. And I did that from
Hmm.
a bed, like completely, you know,
Yeah.
vertical, like not,
Yeah.
sorry, horizontal, completely supine, unable to get up. And it started there. It had to start there. I had
Hmm.
nowhere else. I couldn't. And so it was these little micro reminders of life,
Yep.
right? And for me, a lot of it was my faith and getting
Hmm.
into the word and understanding, what does God say? A lot of
Hmm.
it was getting creative, right? Just
Yep.
bringing in creativity and little simple things. And as I obviously expanded my capacity, I got outside and I sat on there. I had people carry me to the backyard and like place
Yeah.
me into the ground. Like, hey, just leave me here and come get me. And like, when I ring my bell or when I text you, just come get me. And I sat there and I was on the earth, and I did what I could, and I did my
Yep.
practice outside, and little glimpses of visualization,
Hmm.
right? And
Same.
trying to even create in my mind some of this experience and prime my body and my brain for this
Yep.
new experience with visualizing. So, and then when it got to living as I healed, I've shared this before. I took my symptoms with me. Sometimes they were at a
Mm.
10 out of 10. Like, I kid you
Yeah.
not. Sometimes symptoms were, up there, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there were things that I really wanted to do. And so I took my supports with me, right? Yeah, I took
Yeah.
the medication with me. I took my, my
Yep.
tools. I took my fan, my ice pack, my food, whatever
Hmm.
it was. I like packed it and I said, I'm not missing anymore. I'm just not going to miss any more of my life.
That's
And I
exactly what I
and I
did.
did it. And slowly I started to build capacity within whatever activity I was doing, and I started to let go of those tools or
Mm.
words. So yeah, so it was
Someone's
it's okay.
please mute yourself.
Yeah, so how did that look for you? Like living as you heal, how did that start?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, is all about. So that this is where you pair that piece of acceptance, doing the right things for your body, and you begin taking action on your committed action on your values. So this is where again, you can think of what you value in life. You don't even need to write down a list, but you can start doing that. Like, what do I value in life? Like, what have I avoided because of my symptoms and my sensations and life? And like almost like incremental training, like micro actions of safety through living. Like you said, I had to do the same thing. Like I was homebound, bedbound for years, like barely left the house. And for me it was like you said, getting out and just go sitting in my backyard and bringing like a book or a something to listen to and just doing something that was beneficial for my mental health, my body at the time, because sitting there focusing on my symptoms and just healing wasn't helpful. And this is the shift that really, really helped me. And I hope, will help some of you guys. And I would love to answer some of these questions. I know
Yeah.
that there's some in here. Um, I was making healing my focus in living. I shifted and began making living my focus, and healing was there. I did healing practices. I made time for those, but my focus changed. How can I live better with these symptoms, with this chronic illness, little by little, day by day? And it's sometimes it is honoring where you're at. Like again, when it is a 10 out of 10, it's okay to rest. But there's also multiple ways you can rest.
Mm.
Like Vanessa did when she was able to go sit in your backyard, get some fresh air, same deal. Like when I was at my sickest, especially after I relapsed, I knew, like, because of what I did in the past, I knew I am not staying at my house all day and wallowing in my misery. And this was when I was living in DC, Washington, DC at the time. Um, and it was middle of winter. And I knew staying in my house was not beneficial. So I would bundle up, I would bring my cup of tea with me, I would go sit at a park next to my apartment building, or if I could, drive and go to a park. And I would sit there in freezing cold temperature and just put in my earbuds and just listen to relaxing music. And then let me go back home or whatever and do that multiple times, or go on these little walks when I could and just sit on a park bench, walk a little bit more. Because I knew that staying in my house was not beneficial for me. Because that's what kept me stuck and sick all those years when I was trying to heal. I was just staying around, waiting to feel ready. Ready is sometimes it's an action before it's a feeling. And it's okay to move slow. It's okay to honor your body and your needs and things like that. But also, it's okay to show your body, hey, like you did, like I did, symptoms, we're okay. I'm just gonna show you. We're gonna show you like that it's okay. And if you need to retreat, that's okay
That's
too. That's
okay.
okay
Yeah, it's
too.
not a failure.
I
Yeah,
always tell people the attempt is all that matters. The attempt
exactly.
is all that matters. If you retreat, that's fine. Again, you can try again, you know? Yeah,
There's a ton of questions here,
I know.
so
Let's get
maybe
through
we'll
this.
pop
Yeah,
through them.
yeah.
Um, where do you see?
Well, there's one question. Just I just want to say this real
Go for it.
quick. Science and the medical industry are already starting to catch up to mind-body healing. Like I
Yeah.
know that you have experienced it. I've talked to doctors that are seeing chronic illness patients, and they're actually starting to incorporate this. It's even like on podcasts, I've seen like Harvard educated doctors, whether it's heart doctors or neurosurgeons or whatever, that are finally like, now we see exactly what's causing all of this stuff,
Yes.
and then it's similar interventions. So,
Yeah, I definitely
um,
see that
yeah,
it's moving faster now.
yeah, it is.
Definitely, right? So we have Howard Schubner's books like
Yeah,
worldwide. He's on the biggest podcast, the biggest, he's all over it.
hmm
So I think
yeah,
more people, more doctors are really getting on board and getting curious about it, right? Like
hmm
even, my own cardiologist fascinated
yeah,
by neuroscience now, right? Like he's like,
yeah, yeah.
it's so yeah, definitely changing. And okay, so I see Alice asked a question
Mm.
about bouncing back and forth between a victim mentality and some challenges with her husband. trying to show him, I deserve and I need rest, and helping my proving part. Okay, so her proving part shows up, and then she overdoes stuff and trying to prove to him I'm good enough. And
Mm.
he struggles to accept and understand the situation that I'm in after 4 years. How do you continue to work on acceptance? How would you
Yeah.
approach that?
Well, so I've mostly been single, so I haven't had that problem. But here's what I will say. I've also had to learn how to ask for my own needs and set boundaries and needs with myself. And sometimes that's part of it, and that's part of what I teach as well, is instead of wanting to prove yourself, prove your worth or anything like that, um, let people know and ask for what you need verbally, and let people know like this is what I need right now. I am here, I'm moving forward, I'm doing my best, but I also need patience. Can you give me that? Usually when you do it that versus like proving that and like
Mm,
trying to come at it from that victim mindset, then you get more resistance. But if people are like don't know what you actually need, and then you express it in a healthy way, I found more often than not, people are like, "Oh, I understand now." Like, okay. And sometimes you do have to set boundaries over and over. And what I will say about boundaries, and this is what I've learned, I'm not a therapist. Boundaries are for yourself, not for the other person, not being like, you can't do this, but like, hey, this is what I need. And also honoring your needs sometimes if it is stepping away for 15 minutes, an hour to honor your needs is that's a practice in healing. That's a practice, and I really believe that. Um, and sometimes people will also respect that more than trying to force and get them to
yeah.
respect what
Yes,
you
yeah.
you know through that victim lens like you had mentioned.
All right, there's another from Hannah. I think Avivo's just a comment.
Yeah.
Hannah, I struggle with accepting and allowing because I know that, like you said, you can be living life symptom free and then have it sideswipe you again. Just knowing it can come back, it feels hopeless. So there's this big fear. A lot of people have the same fear is, oh, I'm going to heal and I'm going to get sick again. What do you say
Yeah.
to that?
Well, like I've said before, there's no end goal to healing. This is, after reading some of the comments in here and then some of the ones that you had sent me and then other people were asking, this is where you can recognize you're really in resistance because um, if you're trying to place a timeline and
Mm,
or expectation on healing, that's the opposite of healing. It's natural to doubt and have questions. We're all human, right? But this is where you get to be curious about, is this helpful for me to think about what these things in my healing journey. This is why I love acceptance and commitment therapy because like this is the brain retraining aspect of that. It goes true versus helpful thoughts. You
mm,
know, a true thought may, a lot of people in the chronic illness world or whatever will be like, well, I am chronically ill and I am dealing with these symptoms and they are hard. And so it's okay for me to focus on it because they're true. And act acceptance commitment therapy is like it's not it's whether it's true or not is not the point. Is it helpful? Does it help you empower you? Does it actually help you to build acceptance? Does it actually feel good when you are stressing about the future and stressing about a relapse if it happens or something you can't control or thinking worst case scenario? It doesn't. Like really, like
exactly.
this is where people with chronic symptoms and chronic illness, our nervous systems are like they're like antennas now, and we can also see like when our spiraling thoughts and our stories are actually contributing to us feeling worse because we'll feel it more easily than just a healthy person that's living their lives or whatever. Like when I've thought about the future and like and I'm lost in the future and I'm worried about something in the future, I can feel it in my body. Like I'm so
Yes,
in tune
100%. 100%.
and like hold up. I'm
Yeah.
going like this is not helpful. This
Yeah.
is not helpful to stress, and this is where I come back to accept those practices and acceptance, presence, grounding in the present moment
Exactly.
gently.
Out of the mind, into the
Yeah.
body,
Yeah,
right? Where
into the
you're
body. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I agree completely. And, I think this is a good example of, like you said, the thoughts are there. The thoughts for me are always reflecting the state that you're in. You're in a,
Hmm.
really shut down state. Your thoughts are going to tell me where you're at on the spectrum of survival, and I can tell. And it's not something to judge. We're not here to judge or fix our thoughts, but we don't have to follow them. And I think that that's something
Hmm.
people don't realize. We don't have to follow the story. We don't have to make meaning from it. And I think we get caught in those stories, and that's what like we're talking about, really. I don't have to follow this.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just if we try like our thoughts are, are constant and they're especially like the state drives the story. They're constantly feeding a story and it's just our job not to like believe that story, really. Just
yeah,
like let them pass, and then we can gently come back to the present moment, practices, and choose better, more helpful thoughts that will over time shift the story. This is what
yep.
like brain retraining is in a nutshell in my perspective. It's just slowly over time we kind of shift that negative story to a more neutral one, to more helpful ones. But it doesn't happen like overnight, and it doesn't happen by fighting against your thoughts. It just happens with
Mm,
that recognition, like, man, these thoughts are just so negative, like, and just
yeah,
not attaching to them, almost like watching them go and being like, geez, man, this is crazy. It's trying to pull me into the story. I appreciate you, brain, but like we're not. I'm not going to engage with that right now. I'm
yeah.
gonna come back to the present moment, and then again, this is where you can gently shift. Tell yourself a better story.
Um,
Um,
there's another question here. Is there a best time to work through trauma, or even if you should, while you have a chronic illness? When did you do it? I heard you dealt with depression too. Any thoughts on how you approach this? I'll quickly touch on this.
yeah, please. That was for you, I think.
I
From
think I caution people a lot. If you're entering the trauma healing journey saying, I have to heal this trauma or else I won't heal, then you're probably approaching it from that survival energy and you probably don't have the capacity for it.
Mhm.
And also, I have seen an experience with myself that as we've built safety, as all of us build safety in our minds and our bodies, that the way that we even perceive trauma starts to evolve and change as well.
Mhm.
And you need a firm foundation in safety and regulation before you go into any deep trauma.
I
That
agree.
is, I'm very firm on that. I don't believe that we have to relive trauma in order to heal it either. I've seen so much healing happen just through building safety, regulating your nervous system, working on your belief systems. And once you have that foundation, if you feel like you have the capacity to sit with sensation, you have the capacity to sit with emotion, you can be there with your thoughts and be present, then I would say, and you think, you're like, hey, there's trauma here that needs to be worked on, go find yourself, a therapist to work with who's
Yeah.
trauma informed, who understands the body, somatics, the mind body connection. And I love parts work for trauma as well. So that is really how I would work with them. And as for depression, I believe, that depression is again reflecting that complete shutdown state.
Hmm.
That is the lowest level on the ladder of survival that you're in when all other options have been exhausted. And so I don't like labeling it as depression, so to speak. I say it's you're completely shut down in that state, and your thoughts are the lowest that they could possibly be. And I've seen this time and time again where people, as they start to feel safe, as they start to regulate, they move out of that state as well. So hopefully
Yeah.
that answers that question.
I just want to just say I
Yeah.
completely agree, especially when your nervous system is still in that like really hyper vigilant state. You're still in the more dysregulation or sensitized, whatever you want to call the terminology. I didn't know any of the terminology when I
Mm.
healed the first time. I
Yeah.
don't really like stick on the terminology because I think that that can also can be a label that we assign to our symptoms. So I try to
Hmm.
even avoid that. Like even
Yeah.
though we know, like we all understand it now, it's like also like your nervous system's flexible. It's always wanting to heal. But like you said, if I would have like tried to dive into trauma when my nervous system was in like complete collapse, I would it wouldn't have been able to do it. Like I was already like fearful of like watching TV. I couldn't even watch TV at times.
Same.
I couldn't even like hear like sounds, like loud sounds. It was like my nervous system was such
Yeah.
a wreck that if I were trying to dive into trauma, then like I would just wouldn't have been able to heal. So I had to do months and months of just building safety
Yeah.
into my body. And like you said, I don't always think diving into the past is always helpful. Sometimes it can, again, like find a therapist that can really help you with that. But I don't think it should be a continual thing. I think I think personally speaking, take it or leave it, that if it's done, it should be done with someone, and it's just that this is the container for that, and now we're focused on presence, moving forward, versus constantly diving into past. 'Cause that's re-traumatizing yourself and
Yes.
your
Yes.
nervous system, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I
Oh,
think we can get hyper fixated on, again, why are you trying to dig everything up? Right?
yeah.
What's the story there? What's the drive there? Is it because you think you're going to be better or that you're going to solve X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
So the motive, right? Paying attention to the motive. Why are you
Hmm.
approaching this practice or this,
Yeah.
therapy or this activity?
Yeah.
So much there. Uh, yeah.
I'm looking at some of the questions also that you sent me. This kind of
Yeah, there's
goes, there was someone talking about the shutdown free state and with like the mental health fruit salad. Is it div she struggles to do any practices when in this state. It's difficult to be even bothered to accept and allow. I think this is a good question. I also
Mhm.
wanted to touch on this, but I don't know if you wanted to
Go
say
for it.
something too.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this is part of that state. It's gonna tell you why even bother? Why even bother to like do anything today? I'm just gonna lay here. I'm just gonna wallow in my misery. I'm gonna allow myself to be depressed, deal with that anhedonia, that numbness or whatever. And I would never have healed if I would have just listened to that. You can listen, acknowledge it, like this is where I'm at and not have any motivation or desire to do anything, and you still get the choice to say, you know what, I'm going to honor myself because whoever that person was, or any of you guys are in here, you're in here for a reason. You're ready to get better. And part of that ready to get better is you're ready to take some steps in the right direction. And so it's listening to that part of you versus the part of you that's like, I can't even be bothered to do it. What's the point? I don't want to do it. Today sucks. I'll do it another day. It's like, I hear you, nervous system. This is my state trying to keep me stuck and trying to keep me safe. It's your nervous system trying to keep you safe. It thinks you need to be in that shut down state. And part of coming out of it is being like, I see you, and we're gonna go on that walk, or we're gonna we're gonna do this visualization, or we're gonna, you know, find that little bit of joy, whether it is, like going and sitting outside, petting a dog, engaging in a hobby, even if you don't feel the desire to do it. That's how I healed um, severe like depression and hedonia was that acceptance and commitment. This is where I'm at. I know that this is not forever. I'm going to show my body safety through these little micro actions, and that's where we get to do. That's where truly some of the work is, not through fighting against, but
Hmm.
through acceptance and honoring that we're in the we're moving in the direction of health. come on, like nervous system, like
Yeah.
it's like we're we're just bringing it along with us, not trying to fight it, not trying to force change, but just like we're gonna move in this direction because this is self-love. This is self-care. I'm honoring that part of myself. So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Like loving yourself enough to do the work, loving yourself
yeah,
enough to show up. And as
yeah,
we've heard this said so many times in our community, pick your hard.
mm-hmm.
Pick your hard. It's going to be hard.
It's going to be,
Whether you're stuck in a bed suffering or whether you kind of move past some of the resistance
yeah,
and bring in something that could support you. And also letting go of the outcome, practicing outcome independence because you know what, you're not going to shift, or you may not shift right after, right? Or you may,
yeah,
but we can't let that be the reason, the motive for going into it. I'm going to do this so that this completely dissolves because it's going to take time.
yeah,
And I think there's another question here about, yeah, it was the freeze or shut. There was a few questions about freeze or shutdown, but
yeah,
also questions about how do you know if symptoms are neuroplastic or not? And so, someone, because I know you've had diagnosis of
yeah,
Lyme, this person
yeah,
is saying that, if you're diagnosed with Lyme and you have these physical conditions, that means it's a real thing. You have to
yeah.
treat it before you do anything from a system perspective. So that's so how would you respond to that? Because I know
Well,
you,
there's a couple
yeah.
things like so. There's actually Lyme doctors right now that are kind of starting to dive into this and recognizing that um some people with Lyme like don't even have symptoms. And those typically that have more chronic Lyme have a more fragile nervous system and are
Mhm.
more stress prone. And ultimately, getting the body back into safety through these practices are also ultimately what helps suppress any infections like Lyme or any of these things. And I truly believe that as well. Again, I'm not a doctor, but one of the things that I did, I spent years trying to treat. I had a PICC line in and doing all these things and all of these pills and all these supplements and just trying to kill, detox, 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 do all this stuff. It never led me to heal. When I started diving into this, I was still doing some of that stuff at the same time, but like I said, it was an energy. It was like, I'm not focused on what anymore I need to do to kill or heal. It
Mhm.
was like, I'm focused on living. I'll take these supplements if they help me or whatever, if they don't cause a reaction or whatever, and they're not making me like hindering my healing. But I'm focused on living better with the chronic illness and kind of letting the chips fall where they may. And then eventually I just kind of stopped all treatment and just began living better with the chronic illness. And then Lyme and symptoms were non-existent for years. And so that's how I addressed that. But here's the other thing. When I got COVID, my nervous system was so bad that I could not take a pill, a supplement,
Mhm.
or anything like that. Like if I tried to take like magnesium, it was like a bomb went off in my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
Like
We see
so
that a
the
lot.
only
Yep.
yeah, and I've heard that a lot with people after COVID as well, or even with Lyme. It's like they try to take something to kill and it just makes them feel like awful. And I am not in the belief that you need to constantly feel awful to feel better like that by like taking stuff. And there was a period of like months where I was trying to take all these things, and it was like my body was rejecting anything that I took, and the only thing that I could do was work on my nervous system and build safety back into my body without any pills. And that's how I found healing. It wasn't through, all of these pills and supplements. Now I can take supplements and stuff like that, and I'll take like magnesium and like probiotic from time to time
Yeah.
and things like that. Um, but that's the way I look at it now, and you can take it or leave it. I don't look at chronic Lyme and these things in the same way. I look at, am I is my nervous system more of an issue? Am I under more stress? How can I build that safety back into my body? Because this is the thing that I've learned. when there's more safety in my body, when there's more capacity in my body, when I'm feeling, more in that expanded state, like my symptoms slowly disappear,
Yeah,
And
that's a good
yeah,
point. Yeah,
and
because
and then, when I go into those ebbs, I will then sometimes will feel triggered. Oh no, you get those fearful thoughts, but that's a clue for me. Like, look, I'm in this state. I need to build safety. I need to handle
yeah.
stress a bit better. And the body always wants to heal. This is what I will tell you guys. Again, I'm not a doctor. Listen to your doctors, please. But like, I truly believe that the body always wants to heal and is always trying to heal. And sometimes we have to let it heal.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, that was a good point because I think, and we know this maybe even segues to a lot of the questions that came in about fear of things coming back and what to do and how to live your life. What if you get sick again? And there's, one that just came in again. I think Hannah asked
yeah,
this as well earlier. And we go back to that definition of healing or healed. And both Joe and I said, like, that's when the symptoms, the emotions, the stuff doesn't control your life anymore.
yeah,
That's healing. And I think
yeah,
maybe I think there's a lot of people who just, I mean, it sucks feeling symptoms. It sucks having all of this stuff and being sick or
yeah,
whatever you want to call it. But, when you can really just accept, like right now, I believe like many of you are in that place where you can't accept where you're at. And that's why I kind of bring your attention to the fact that we need to kind of grieve this. Like it really, really sucks. And when you can finally accept where you're at right now, you can build safety, with that, but also recognizing that like we're all human and
yeah,
can we accept the fact that life will happen and our bodies will speak to us at times
yeah,
because they are messengers? Like, how beautiful that your body can now send you a message because it can't speak to you in a language and it's going to give you a headache or whatever it might be and say, hey, too much. It's been too much for too long.
mm,
Even Howard Schubner talked about this on a podcast recently. He's like, hey, I still have neuroplastic symptoms periodically come up. And
yeah,
it's usually because I'm really, really stressed out and I'm doing too much. And
yep,
I think that we have this unrealistic standard of what healing looks like or healed.
yeah,
And then we place all of us coaches on this pedestal of like perfection. And we're like, I'm not perfect.
no,
If I'm going 90 for nothing and I'm not taking care of myself, guess what? My body's going to talk. But
yeah,
guess what? I'm going to listen. I'm going to
hmm,
say, oh, I hear you. Yeah, we've been
yeah,
like going nuts. And I'm going to support myself. And then
yeah,
the symptoms don't have to become chronic or debilitating. And I think that's the
yeah,
difference, Hannah. If or you already have this story in your brain, in your mind that's saying, if I heal, something's going to happen and I'm going to get sick again. I'm going to first point you to something will happen because something happens for everyone.
yeah,
That's just
yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Something will
Even the
always,
healthiest person.
even
Yeah.
the healthiest person, life will always happen.
Yeah.
But you're going to have foundation. You're going to have these resources. You're going to be able to recognize the symptom talking, a part of your body and say, oh, you need my attention. Let me pause. Let me make a change. How many times in my life where, I would feel something come on and I'm like, oh, and all I needed to do was make one change, right? Like
Hmm.
bring in one element support. You know what? I'm just gonna bring in support someone to watch my kids this week, or whatever it is. Just take off some of the load that you're carrying. We
Yeah.
are not meant to be superhuman where we're bypassing every human need so that we can be, fearless and flawless. Flawless. We're not flawless. We are, imperfect
Yeah.
and and that's okay. So having a symptom after being healed does not mean you're sick again. It
Yeah.
also is not a failure. It's also not something to fear. And what I see too often is that the fear of getting symptoms again or of them coming back is stealing the life.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely taking away the ability to be here now. So you're
Yeah.
already in the future. You're living your life from, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line. And that's
Yep.
where we have to really, we can place a boundary with that part that's speaking with it and saying, let's come back here. What's true
Yeah.
here now, right?
Yeah. I agree. And I also want to speak to this too. There are a couple things. So healing is a journey. Like I don't even look at it like, oh, I'm constantly healing. I don't, it doesn't come off as that like that daunting thing, you know. I'm just like, oh, whatever. I'm just, living. I live normally. Like I live a normal, full, rich life. Probably I'm 42. I probably do more than the average 42-year-old at this time. I'm like still out there at the skate park with like the 20-year-old kids, after dealing with a chronic illness for, 20 years on and off and things like that. So, it's about, do you coexist with symptoms at times when they arise? Or, do you fight them, fear them, stress against them, and let them pull you down? Like healing and enjoying your life with symptoms coexist. You can have symptoms and have
Yep.
joy.
Yep.
You can have symptoms and have new experiences and have happiness, and all of these things happen. And they can all coexist. And the thing is, when they do that way, is also when they begin to
Yep.
resolve and they
Exactly.
they fade away. Um, so that's where I always tell people, like, at the beginning of this journey, what acceptance is just like, can you just live better with that chronic illness and those symptoms? And like we talked about at the beginning, maybe that's just 5% better, for now. Um, and then lastly, the thing that I wanted to say, I'm a poster child of what not to do. This is why I also talk about lifestyle changes that are beneficial,
Yeah.
because I was sick with Lyme disease. I got better completely, went back to get my degree in graphic design, worked as an art director in advertising agency for over a decade, fell back into drinking all the time because that's what people do in advertising, stressing, unhealthy relationships, eating crappy food, not moving my body in healthy ways, taking on more than I could handle. I was getting my master's and working at the same time. And plus, I was, people pleasing and not setting boundaries that I needed. And it was a recipe for disaster. So that's where, when people are like, well, you can do all the right things and still relapse. Well, I also did a lot of the wrong things that caused me, when I got COVID, to relapse. That's why I look at like healing now and like what I do. I don't even like to look at it as healing, but like the practices and everything that I do is just a lifestyle shift. It's like this is a lifestyle I'm living as self-love, self-care, because I want to live a normal, healthy life full of joy and happiness and not fall back into unhealthy patterns that were partially responsible for the relapse. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
it does become part of your life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, at least, and what I'm trying to teach, my people is that your practice should feel like it weaves into your life, where
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel like a separate practice of like, and that disconnection, like, oh, hold on, let me stop everything and do
Mm-hmm.
this. It's how can I weave in safety into my daily life so that this becomes, like you said, a lifestyle where
Yeah.
you move differently, you respond differently, you pause in the moment of your life instead of stopping your entire life to do the healing and then getting back to it. So there's this separation, this disconnection, almost like the same disconnection of mind and body we had some for so many years. And so we
Yeah.
see that playing out in the healing community too. So I think great point.
True.
And there's, if you have time, there's one last question from Sam,
Yeah.
who she asked a really good question. She says, "Any advice for avoidance-based OCD in the moment? In the moment, for example, if I simply avoid the trigger, then there's no anxiety, but a full exposure is too much currently. Can you both
Mm.
recommend what you would do in the moment to rewire, ideally a shorter practice rather than a full visualization or tapping script? Trying to be vague to avoid
Yeah.
trigger anyone, but hopefully not too vague to answer. What do you think? Anything that comes to mind that you would do with that OCD in the
Well,
moment that comes up?
yeah, I'm curious. It's hard for me to like really answer this because like OCD can come in so many different forms. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? OCD can just be hyper focusing on your symptoms, which again, the recognition I think is some of the most helpful parts of all of this. It is like, when I had that type of behavior, it was just recognizing like, wow, this is really unhelpful. And so then I can choose more helpful because it becomes an unconscious thing. I think a lot of OCD for me at least, again, I'm not a therapist, I don't, it was very unconscious, and it was like trying to uh help myself in the moment to feel better in the moment, but it was also prolonging and keeping me stuck and sick. And so just the recognition, like, I want to engage in this pattern, this OCD pattern, and recognize that what I want to do may not be helpful for me, and then redirecting towards more helpful things. Again, I'm not a therapist. I didn't have that like clinical, like that di diagnosed OCD because I know it can take many, many forms, but that was what was helpful to me in how when I had more like OCD, obsessive thoughts, obsessive sort of behaviors that were not helpful, was just like asking myself, like, man, is this really like supporting my healing? Is this helpful for me to focus on and then act on this behavior?
Mm,
And then it was always like obvious answer, no.
yeah.
So, okay, let me gently let this go, reconnect with my values and things that are going to be beneficial for me in this moment instead.
Yeah, so same, very similar in a sense. And Hannah just popped in and she shared that she's been doing ERP therapy,
Okay.
exposure and response therapy.
Yeah.
And it says that you acknowledge that it's an OCD protective part, which is what I would do, and maybe just delay 10, 20, 30 seconds, and let the wave kind of move on. And
Hmm.
she says you might not be ready to delay super long or full exposure, and that's okay. That's great. Very helpful, Hannah. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. I've always seen OCD as a part.
Hmm.
And, do believe that many people who are in Haven know that I have this pause approach where we literally just pause, literally
Hmm.
say pause in the moment, pause, take your
Yeah.
breath back, and you move through the process, accept, allow, you notice,
Hmm.
and you come back into your body and then re-engage with the whatever activity you were going to do on whatever was aligning with your life. So Sam,
Yeah.
for me to respond to you, it would be kind of a mini pause. That's what I would do in that
Yeah.
moment to interrupt that programming and to re-engage with life. And maybe that might look like just that kind of pause and then breathing,
Hmm.
re-engaging.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Hannah says for those with OCD, pause approach has a lot of roots
Mm.
in ERP therapy. Yeah, so again, kind of bringing in
Hmm.
those same principles. But I think we got to almost everything, hopefully. This
Yeah.
was so good to
Yeah.
have you on. Maybe we could do another sometime. I would
Would
love,
love to. Yeah. I
yeah,
think we could talk about this over and over again. And there's
yeah.
so
Would you
many
guys
layers.
want another? Put your
Yeah.
thumbs up. Maybe you would
Yeah.
want to have another collaboration. I think it's great to have.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Awesome.
Yeah,
And
would love to. Yeah.
yeah, what I'll
There's a lot
do
of
is,
layers to acceptance
yeah,
and
there
this
is.
type of healing and doing all of this because again, I just it's not acceptance, it's accepting and it's practices and it takes some committed action in these practices, which are hard.
Yeah,
But like Vanessa said, we get to choose our hard. Our hard can be staying stuck and sick and in bed and wallowing in our misery, or it can be choosing to be empowered and to do things that are beneficial for us, and acceptance practices are just that. Like this stuff is all based in brain science and
It is.
psychology. Again, there's people talking on, psychology on here, and it's been studied. And it's, again, things like ERP and ACT and like all of these practices that you teach, they're all based in science. Like there's tons of science that
Yes.
supports this
Yes.
and healing the brain, the nervous system, and all that. So it just takes some committed action and consistent practice and giving yourself some grace, man. Like we're gonna fail a lot of times throughout this journey. Like, but failure is just like part of it, you know? We get caught in some of the unhealthy things, and it's just part of the journey. Give yourself grace,
And
throughout that.
accepting that too,
Yeah,
accepting that literally part of the journey is, the up and down,
yeah,
the
yeah.
expansion and the contractions, and
Hmm.
that we heal through contractions too. And again, like reiterating to all of you, we are both proponents of healing as you live and living
Yeah,
as you heal. And acceptance is a piece of that. I know life probably isn't what you expected right now, and that is something to grieve, and that's okay. But even now, in the midst of what you're experiencing, your sensations, your emotions, your thoughts, whatever it is, how can we bring life in? How can
yeah.
we take micro moments of life and living and see that as our medicine?
Mm,
And I'll definitely
yeah.
like let's collab again. I'll probably post this on YouTube maybe so
Would
your
love
team
it.
could access it
Yeah.
and you'll all be able to access through there as well. And I'll pop it in my membership as well. So,
Cool.
Joe, it's so good to
Love
have you as
this.
always.
Yeah. Yeah, we
And
align on all this stuff, so it's always good to chat. Love
yeah.